All right, let's go ahead and get started. Again, welcome everyone. We're so glad to have you today. And I am really excited to moderate this discussion today because it's an important one and it's a very familiar challenge for many of the organizations that we work with at Codility. You've got an interesting paradox on our hands. The recent mass layoffs in the tech industry have created a situation where, on the one hand, there is a surplus of available talent, which means there's a lot of competition for open roles, and that competition is only intensifying. And one might think this might make recruiting and attracting easier. But at the same time, the tech workers who manage to survive layoffs, many of whom are your really talented senior engineers, are grappling with the aftermath of these layoffs. And they have anxiety linked to perceived job insecurity and future potential cuts. So ultimately, this leads them to be very hesitant when it comes to exploring new job opportunities. So when you're thinking about the concept of a passive candidate, they may be a little bit more passive than usual because of this insecurity and fear of future job loss. At the same time, though, many tech companies have scaled back their hiring efforts, which allows them more time and resources to carefully sift through the available talent and vie for the attraction of senior engineers. So in light of these circumstances, our session today is going to cover how companies can make the most of their time and resources to attract and recruit these senior, highly sought after engineers in today's market. So again, thanks for joining. We're excited to kick things off. Before we get started, a couple of housekeeping notes. Today's session is being recorded, and we are going to send the recording to all registrants after the event. And then throughout the session today, please submit any questions using the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. Some of those we might be able to answer during the session, while others will leave for the end. We have a time set aside for questions. So the way our session is going to flow today, we have a set of questions planned for the panelists, and it will be a dialogue between our esteemed panelists. And then we have a fun speed round at the end where panelists will have 60 seconds to provide an answer to a set of questions that I have for them. And then at the end, like I said, we'll move over to your questions. So get those questions into Q&A. We'll be tracking those and organizing those along the way. All right, so before we kick things off, I wanted to introduce our esteemed panelists. Very excited to have both Eugene and Jeremy with us today. First up, Eugene Garla is the VP of Talent at Index, a global talent platform which specializes in sourcing remote tech talent from the Balkans, Latin America, and the CIS regions. Eugene is a sharp technical recruitment leader who has a passion for people and sourcing and technology, and his knowledge in the HR and tech industry has made him a well-known consultant and mentor to startup founders in areas like screening, finding talent gems, and remote hiring. Eugene has also played a significant role in career event and HR automation with a strong focus on recruitment automation powered by AI, which is another very timely area of focus for us these days. And next up, my dear friend and colleague, Jeremy Schmidt. Jeremy is a founding partner at Thrively, a recruiting and consulting firm specializing in the tech industry. He's a seasoned talent management leader who brings a wealth of experience and innovation to the world of HR. Jeremy has honed his skills in building global talent functions and crafting the essential infrastructure to facilitate organizations' growth through the power of top-tier talent, which I will personally take as a compliment because he recruited me to Codility. All right. Panelists, are you ready? We're going to kick things off.
Ready.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Okay. So our first question is for Jeremy. In today's competitive talent landscape, what strategies tend to be most effective for attracting senior engineers to your organization?
That's a great question to kick things off. And I think traditionally, if a organization loses a senior engineer, what happens? The engineering manager gets frazzled, reaches out to the talent team, they go through a job description, they get the role posted, and they want to get it live as quick as possible. But I think when you really break down how do you attract a senior engineer, a lot of organizations miss that first step, which is probably the most crucial, which is sitting down with your team, doing a proper intake, and figuring out what is it that you have to sell as an organization that would be attractive to the type of senior engineer that you are trying to solicit. So I think before you can even go out there tactically to attract a senior engineer, you have to look yourself in the mirror, have an honest discussion, and really think about, okay, what is it that we're going to highlight about us that makes us attractive? I was talking with another colleague, Carrie Hanna, who's a director of recruiting, and we were talking about this subject, and she said it's almost like ransom recruiting these days. You send out a bunch of messages, and the applicants will respond back with a list of sort of demands before they will even interview or talk to you about a position. So I think trying to get ahead of that by highlighting those things and being able to articulate that is crucial. So talking about things like location up front. Are you 100% remote? Are you hybrid? Are you in office? Just putting it out there right from the beginning and not hiding behind that fact. Senior engineers post-COVID, they want flexibility. They want better benefits. They want to be tied to the meaning of the organization and the values. And so really looking at those and thinking about, okay, what makes us attractive to that senior engineer that we're going after? Tech stack. Do you have a super modern tech stack that would be really exciting for engineers to work with? Do you have an older tech stack that you're going through some modernization and changes that could be, attractive for an engineer? One thing I love to do is message some of the developers on the team and say, hey, what would a senior engineer like about working on this team? You get some really, really interesting answers, and it only takes 30 seconds to send a quick Slack, over to those team members. And at the end of the day, once you're able to build your list of what makes your organization attractive that you can actually sell to the market, then you can go out and build your sourcing strategy. Then you can go into LinkedIn and use a lot of the different filters to narrow down your search to a candidate pool that you think would be interested in what you have bringing to the table. And from a tactical perspective, we've been experimenting with a new platform called Loom, which is a video platform. So as you're able to build out these candidate lists of senior engineers that you want to target, you can actually put a video over the top of a screen of what you want to talk to them about. So what we'll do is we'll go on their LinkedIn profile and we'll make a video sort of going through their background, the things that we're seeing that could potentially align with our organization, and just putting our cards on the table, being 100% honest. And if someone sends me a video and I see my LinkedIn page with their face over it, like, I'm going to click on it. I want to know what's going on there. But it's a great way to engage senior engineering talent, and they can see that you understand what makes your roles attractive. And I think that really, really increases your response rate and helps you develop rapport in those relationships.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeremy. I really love the idea of using video to supplement the process. That's certainly, we've been doing some research on what's attractive to members of the Gen Z generation as well. And they've kind of grown up in this digital era, and short snippets of video content is also highly resonant with that population too. So that might be a strategy that works not only for your sought after gems, but also for some of the more entry level junior talent coming into the workforce now.
It's a great icebreaker.
Yes, I love that. Awesome. So, all right, moving on to the next question. And before I do that, I meant to mention we have some points on the slide. This is just to kind of reiterate and anchor what our folks are speaking about. But you'll get a copy of the slides in the recording, so don't feel like you need to feverishly jot things down. All right. So our next question: remote work. Remote work, as Jeremy mentioned, has become more common and even the norm in many tech organizations. So how do you accommodate the preference of senior engineers, many of whom really value this flexibility that remote work brings, while maintaining the team cohesion and culture that you get from a more high-touch experience? And so this one's for Eugene.
Yeah, and it's a great topic. I absolutely love it. I've worked remotely for over 10 years, and I've seen how the industry changed. And it's really fantastic that we're having a discussion about it. And the main thing here I want to emphasize is that a lot of things in remote you'll have to design by intent. Because usually in the office, a lot of the things that we didn't even ever thought about, they occurred just because people were there, just because people interacted face to face. And then when you went remote, a lot of people don't understand, hey, something changed, something doesn't work, my team is not the same, because some things got lost that we never actually prepared before. They were there because they were there by the office, not by design and intent. And I really want the talent acquisition managers and co-founders and technical lead engineers to think that when they are attracting senior engineers, they have to design a lot of things by intent. It will not occur naturally how it used to be when we were recruiting people in office. And I'll just give one example. I'm asking a lot of, especially technical engineer leads that are doing a lot of interviews. I'm asking them, hey, did you coach your team on how to do one-on-one technical video interviews? And they say, well, wait, why? But people are doing video calls all day. Why should they be coached how to have a very good video interview? But this is the recruitment instrument. Just having a video call doesn't make you a great assessor, doesn't make you a great video recruiter. So when you are designing by intent, yes, our recruitment will look like this. One of the elements will be an HR interview. One of the elements will be a technical interview. How do you make sure that people are actually great at doing those? How do you make sure that when they are integrating a live coding session, that they know how to do that, so that actually senior engineers don't see this as a unprepared thing from the company side, because it might affect the reputation, how it goes after that as well. And also on the second part here, what I've noticed is something like a hush agreement that nobody's putting it out there, but a lot of people agreed on, is the expectation from remote workers and their onboarding really shrank in time. If we were working in offices, I remember 3 months, 6 months was like a normal agreed term that people would expect for a talent to get in, to thrive, to adapt, to start bringing added value. Right now, I see a lot of messages. Yes, your talent is working for us for 1 month and we don't see the added value as fast as we expected. So what really needs to change is the onboarding has to be really speed on here. People don't have the time to wait 3-6 months for remote talent to start bringing added value. If they don't bring added value from the first week or from the first month, usually here is when people will say and start guessing themselves, maybe remote work is not the way to go. Maybe the recruitment was a bad hire. So your onboarding, if up until now, a lot of things you were expecting to happen naturally, your onboarding needs to be very well designed, much more, let's say, content, much more organized, and definitely the person should start having first results in the first few weeks. Otherwise, the team will start second-guessing itself. And when teams start to second-guessing, this is when we as talent acquisitions, or even the candidates, start to feel it, that things are not there. So 2 important things that we should adjust to remote world. It will not just happen by itself.
Great. Thanks, Eugene. And a couple of points you made there really resonated with me. I'm an IO psychologist. I realized I didn't introduce myself at the beginning, but that's okay. I'm not the one you came to see. The importance of preparing not only interviewers for training, but also candidates too. So as a recruiter, what tips can you give them? And are there opportunities for mock interviews so that they can prepare for and become comfortable with the recruitment process as a virtual process? And I think that not only does it a service to the candidate, but it also creates a really nice brand representation that, you're a candidate-centric and a candidate-forward company that wants to help them thrive and onboard and acclimate as quickly as possible to that environment. I know, Jeremy, obviously you recruited for a long time for Codility and have recruited many folks that are coming into a remote or hybrid environment. What have you heard in your experience? Are candidates concerned about balancing that, or do they have just expectations? What's the general sentiment of senior engineers around coming into a remote work environment?
I think when I talk to senior engineers, and I'll go into this a little bit more in the next question as well, as they go through a process, they need to know that they're going to be working with other senior engineers. Nobody likes to be alone at the top of the mountain. Nobody wants to be the only one in the room to make a technical leadership decision. They want to know that they have a team, or they're going to be joining a team with other really smart and talented engineers. And so how you can articulate that through your process and show that to the candidates not only gives them a great candidate experience, but it gives you a chance to show that on your side of the fence that you have some great talent that they can partner with as well. So I think pulling the right people into the process that you know can give that engaging candidate experience, can explain how they build dynamics in a remote first world. What does that look like? How do the teams come together? I think goes a long way with a senior engineer.
Yeah, great point. All right, we're going to shift gears. And I'm not answering this because it will be biased, so I'm having someone else answer it. What role do coding assessments and technical interviews play in evaluating senior engineers? And I'm asking because sometimes we hear from some of our customers that, well, we can't possibly ask a senior engineer to sit and take an assessment or do a whiteboard technical interview. They've been in the field, they have the experience, their resume shows it. That would be off-putting to them. But I want to hear, Jeremy, what's been your experience with the role of coding assessments, and how do you strike a balance between doing the assessment and respecting their experience and, making sure to not off-put more senior, kind of that highly sought after talent?
Yeah, I think in today's remote first world, a technical assessment or a technical screen is 100% necessary for an organization, right? Because at the end of the day, they have to know that this person has at least the technical knowledge to do the role that they need done. With that said, it is difficult on how you balance that. So in my experience, the candidates know in a remote first world, they're going to have some type of technical assessment. So not making it a point of contention, but setting their expectations up front and walking them through the process and being very honest of what that looks like and getting their buy-in, that goes such a long way. One thing that I love to do is talk to the senior engineers and articulate to them that, hey, we understand how spread thin you are, right? We value your time, and we're trying to create this process that makes sense for both sides of the table. So here is our traditional process. Here are the steps that we take, but also here's why and what we're trying to assess during those parts of the process so that they can prepare accordingly. And going back to what I said in the last question, they also want to be able to see that they're going to work with other smart engineers. So I think this is an organization's best chance. If you take nothing else away from this webinar for me today, think about your process and who you have involved in your process to help sell your organization. Because at the end of the day, when an engineer leaves a technical screen, they want to know, number one, that the person assessed their skill set correctly and knew what they were doing. But number two, see them as a colleague and someone they could potentially partner with. And a quick story. I was the third employee of a startup. We built an amazing technical team in a remote part of Illinois in the middle of farm fields. We called it Silicon Valley, was our tagline. And after a couple years, we had a parent company come in, and the parent company had another hub of engineers about 40 miles away. And they hadn't been able to hire a single engineer over the last 6 months. And so they asked, since we had such good success, could we go look at their process? And went through their process, spent time at their facility. Everything seemed to align very, very well. And I said, okay, let me get my own candidate and walk them through the process and figure out what is going on here. And during the technical screen with the staff level engineer, they ran a list of questions that they would say, hey, this list of questions is to go down to sort of dig deep and see where does your knowledge sort of stop on a couple of these different subjects. But as the staff level engineer was going down with the candidates, you could see when their knowledge would stop. But then as the questions continued, it was just breaking them. And after the interview, the candidate said to me, Jeremy, I know I didn't do great, but even if they offered me the role, I don't think that I would take it. And it was just simple feedback to that staff level engineer who was extremely collaborative and everybody loved to work with. And all I said is, next time you do this list of questioning, go on a whiteboard, stand up with the candidate, hand them a marker, and as you're going down, when you lose them, when you know you're losing them, teach them something. Walk them through and say, okay, let's go through this problem and think about it this way. Let them draw some things out. Make them walk away from the interview saying, hey, that person was awesome. I learned something through this process. That's what you want a senior engineer to feel when they go through your process, that they were able to learn about your organization, their skill set was assessed in the right way that they felt comfortable with, you valued their time, and that they can see on the other side of the fence there's other smart people that they would love to work with.
Love to hear it. Thanks, Jeremy. And Eugene, anything to add?
Yeah, I'll add just one thing here. I'll add some more info a bit later, but for the last 4 years, we had more than 10,000 interviews that our talent has had with various tech companies throughout the world. And one really basic mistake that I've seen is after sending the assessments and interviews and coding interviews and tests, a lot of time afterwards, either the co-founders or tech leads or recruiters are entering into this vacation mode, or they know that they will have a conference or something that afterwards will provide a very delayed feedback to a technical assessment. And it's really important to understand that if it's an interview, if it's a 30-minute interview and afterwards the feedback is delayed, candidates perceive it in one way, it's not great. But they accept if, for example, someone got ill or they're on leave or they're on an event. But if they invested 4 or 5 hours in completing a test, completing a home assignment, and having all of the things that they've done, and then 2 weeks they do not hear anything just because the person that needs to give feedback goes on leave, then that's something that really affects both the motivation and the feedback that they provide towards this candidate. So when planning the assessment and the technical interviews and the home assignments, please make sure that the feedback afterwards is not something that actually more brings harm than added value. And yeah, Jeremy, great point as well.
That makes a lot of sense. And in some of Codility's research, we found that being ghosted is one of the most common complaints of engineers that are going through a recruitment process. It's even, and it has to do with what we in IO psychology call interactional justice. People want to just be treated fairly. And so if they're investing their time in the process, they want to feel that their time is being respected and that they are being respected as a human being, much less a potential hire. And these perceptions of justice throughout these types of processes are linked to all kinds of perceptions and attitudes about the company during the process and even after the process. So candidates that are treated more fairly during the process tend to be more satisfied with their jobs. They tend to be more affectively committed to their roles. So you get a nice boost in the sentiment toward the organization, whether or not the person is hired, and that boost stays with the person as they become an employee. So the types of things that you mentioned are really important, and it's that equity. So if a senior candidate invests time, that's time and money at a senior candidate's hourly rate, and so that needs to the give back to that person needs to be commensurate with that. Great. Okay, let's move on. So this one is for Eugene. What are some of the common mistakes or misconceptions organizations make when trying to hire senior candidates, and how can they avoid these?
Yeah, so one I added previously as well, when you are planning, please make sure that you don't leave too much time to provide feedback. Or another mistake we've seen, especially with young startups and young founders, and technical recruiters that are just entering this field, is also speeding through the process. So going through 10 interviews a day without having the right amount of time to understand or maybe evaluate or take feedback is also not great as well. So a big mistake here is taking too long, 1 week, 2 weeks to provide feedback, but at the same time, don't just rush with the decision, especially with the retention rate being so affected because we are hiring people that they look great, they solve a test, but at the end of the day, will they bring added value to the startup, to the company? That's the big question there. The second one, and Jeremy did mention here, is don't get lost in the crowd, especially the smaller organizations that don't have huge brand or budget. They forget that people don't just join organization because they receive the funding. A lot of startups receive funding, but the question is, will you be just another startup that receive funding and then in 6 months start to look funding again? They need to understand a bit more was like, what's driving that funding? Is it just going from round to round, or is it a great company that wants to solve a great problem for our customers? So maybe you don't have the budget or the brand, but you can have something that no company have, and that is solving a problem that a lot of people will be passionate about. And you need to sell that throughout the whole process, not just at the beginning in your job ad. The third thing here is code doesn't equal belonging. You might recruit a great technical expert, but just doesn't want to work in the team, or doesn't necessarily agree with the fact that this is how the startup or the company approaches solving a global issue. Maybe someone does not actually care if it's in health tech or fintech, but there are people that they care in the each industry they are. So yes, code is important, but that doesn't equal belonging. So there is a lot of other things that we need to check before we actually make the hire. Every time I'm giving this example of my dog. So when we adopted it, they said that it's a rescue dog, that it's a Jack Russell. So the first 3 months, it looked like a Jack Russell, but 5 years later, it's a 27-kilo dog, has like almost nothing left of the Jack Russell. So just because they tick some boxing at the beginning doesn't mean that it is the right hire for long term. And yeah, making sure that you're not putting technologies out there in the job description just because they're nice. Sometimes we are looking at JDs that are having 5 points, but it's nice to have 10 points. Like, sorry, but what's actually the one that is very important to attract the candidates? If you are having 10 points in your nice to have, maybe you need to understand the role much better when you are building it. And yeah, I know it will sound weird, but I really would recommend for you to cancel an interview or be late for an interview rather than come for an interview and not be prepared. There's nothing worse than just being there and say, yeah, I didn't have time to check your resume. But or I didn't have time to check your technical assessment that you invested 3 hours in completing it. So really, better don't come for the interview. Cancel, reschedule, be late, rather than being there and show that you didn't invest time in the candidate. That is the biggest deal breaker that we've seen. We've seen a lot of candidates say, I'm sorry, they didn't even check the thing that I invested 3 hours in. I will never want to work for that company. So 5 things. I really believe that people from the audience, if you don't do that, you'll be in the 20% of tech companies that are doing amazing work that people will want to work for and people will write case studies about.
Yeah, Eugene, that was a great answer. And I'll piggyback one thing on the end of that. On the client side, I think mistakes that organizations can make is not defining the other competencies necessary for that person to be successful in your organization and only focusing on the tech. So like Eugene was talking about the code over the belonging and inclusivity, during that intake process, you need to really define what are the specific competencies outside of the technical skills that we need to assess, and how are we going to assess those in the correct way to make sure that we're finding someone that will add to our culture, not fit into our culture.
Well, this is music to my ears. As an IO psychologist, we think a lot about cultural fit within a company, and there's lots of different ways that someone can fit with a company, with a role. And I think, as both of you have mentioned, one of the key points is making sure that the job description is accurate and complete and well-written and describes what the person is actually expected to do and bring to the table. So a poorly constructed job description is kind of the a point of failure before you have even started. So I just wanted to reiterate the importance of the job description and setting the stage for the entire process. And I also wanted to give a shameless plug for the new engineering skills model that Codility is rolling out, where we have attempted to model a holistic view of the skills needed for modern engineering. And it covers not only the technical skills, but the skills needed to manage oneself intrapersonally and thrive in a professional environment, to collaborate effectively, and to solve problems. And so that's currently available, and we'll be putting more attention around that soon. But that very issue was what we were trying to tackle in our research: is what else beyond just coding skills does an engineer need to thrive? And it's this complex interplay of these non-technical and technical skills that really qualify a senior candidate in particular, because many times they're not doing the more heavy, coding task based. They're supervising, they're leading teams, they're coaching, they're mentoring, they're solving really complex system level problems or considering architectural issues. And so there are different ways of thinking at that level that need to be addressed in the hiring process. So I fully support what both of you were saying. All right, let's move ahead. I mentioned in my little intro spiel that while there is a lot of talent in the market right now, it's not necessarily the fact that the best and brightest engineers are also in that pool. Some of those were retained during these mass layoffs, and they're scared to start looking for other jobs because they don't want to further threaten their job security. So I mentioned, the idea of a passive candidate. I would say they're almost actively not looking for jobs right now because of the fear of being without a job. And so this is for Jeremy. How can companies build relationships with potential senior engineering candidates before they're actively looking, or when they're actively afraid to begin looking?
Yeah, it's really a great question. And if anyone has spent any amount of time in recruiting and working with hiring managers, and the manager will say, hey, we're going to be hiring a lot for this role coming forward. We need to find and build out a passive pipeline of great engineers. And it needs to be a big, fat, passive pipeline. And we need to be able to pull from, it's a myth, right? You can do it, but you have to do it the right way. And I think anytime when you're talking about engaging with hesitant or passive candidates, it's all about building trust and building rapport. And I'm going to go all Brene Brown on everybody here. You can't build trust and you can't build rapport without having some level of vulnerability yourself. You can't just generate a relationship with a passive candidate out of thin air. I think that I read a research paper recently that said you have to touch a passive candidate 6 to 8 times before they'll even respond to you that first time. So when I think about soliciting and working with passive candidates, the first thing, again, goes back to knowing what you're selling, showing your expertise, that you have substance to what you're saying in your messaging, knowing your product, knowing your customers, knowing your market. You want that passive candidate to say, okay, this recruiter actually knows the business. They know what they're doing. This is someone that I want to be, connected to. And once you are able to connect, offer value in other ways than just trying to hire them. Right? I will always talk to passive candidates and say, hey, if there's someone in my network or a company that I've worked with, it doesn't necessarily have to be at my organization, that you want an introduction to, I'm happy to do so, because maybe you'll go to another company and then you'll end up using us to hire your next 5 engineers. So trying to add value outside of just trying to hire them And from a tactical perspective, there's a tool called Dripify, which is amazing for automation for LinkedIn, for passive candidates, where you can literally build out your different campaigns. It will send automated messages. It will like different pieces of content. It will stay, your brand will stay in front of the candidates that you're trying to solicit and work with and generate those relationships. So at the end of the day, there's not a secret sauce to building rapport. There's not a secret sauce to getting someone to trust you outside of the fact that you opening up, adding value in other ways, and showing that you're a subject matter expert in a niche that they are a part of. That is what's going to generate those relationships. And when you do have roles, that's what's going to make passive candidates be less hesitant to work with you on different things.
Awesome. Anything to add there, Eugene?
Yeah, also I would like to mention that sometimes the message that you're sending just finds the person not in the right moment, right? Not in the right mood, not in the right company. Just brilliant message from Jeremy there. It takes a bit more time than just sending 2-3 messages to the candidate and saying they're not responding. So that's it. Especially in remote, people do get to have understanding of who they are, their roles, their companies. A lot of them are transforming right now. Today it's back to office, tomorrow they understand it doesn't work, so it's okay, hybrid, and then actually remote first seems to be our choice. So this could be happening in really one month with the company. So if you're sending them just 1-2 messages, yeah, they'll say, yeah, I'm not interested. But understand that really the dynamic right now. So your first message might not go there, but your 7th could be the right moment for the candidate to read.
Yep, agreed. All right, we have one more question before our speed round, so I'll turn it to Eugene for this question. Could you share some examples of creative sourcing strategies or methods or partnerships that have helped you discover hidden gems among senior engineering talent?
Yeah, so I've been in an organization for many years that we are providing several instruments for companies to interact or connect with tech talent. And I would talk to companies and they say, we want to partner with you on a hackathon. And I would ask, why? What's the profile of your tech talent? Are they the ones that actually enjoy talking to customers, enjoy talking to engineers of other teams, enjoy building products? And they would say, no, they're not like that at all. We actually value more people that are doing clean code, are very independent, and they more take care of their excellence. Say, why would you come to a hackathon where people that go there, they like to interact, they like to talk to customers, they like to, and not seeing tech as in a bubble. So every time when you're thinking of an instrument, thinking of the type of profile that you would like to attract, or the type of engineers that you already have, and the type of engineers that you would like to build inside the company. Because actually the instrument that you'll be using might completely be not a fit for the type of profiles that you're looking for. A lot of companies, I'm asking, why do you interact with tech students? Because our competitors are doing this. But are actually your profile of people those that will grow 5-7 years inside the company? Are you the type of organization that provides nature for them to grow for the next 5-7 years? If not, then maybe academic collaboration is not the right instrument for you. And at the same time, when you are creating engagements with tech communities, I really recommend for you to understand that it's not only you for them. A lot of time we are creating this approach, oh, we must send 7 newsletters, we must put 7 videos and 10, and if we'll do that, people will think that we're a great company. A lot of times it's just about providing an interaction between them. That's it. You don't have to be the only one creating content. You don't have to be the only one that puts the agenda on the table. A lot of time is actually asking, hey, today our senior engineer will be there. What would you like to talk about? So when engaging community and when creating instruments, really a lot of time is for you to create the relationship rather than building an agenda, building topics, and making sure that next topic will be about the new .NET release and how it will impact the engineering. Maybe that's not a topic that people want to discuss. So understanding the profile will really reshape the type of sourcing strategies that you might take in the future.
Great. Jeremy, anything else to add to that one?
I think the more personality that you can input into your sourcing messages goes a long way. At the end of the day, people want to work with good people, and being able to show that and build those relationships and be a little bit different than the 90% of normal messages that passive candidates probably get. So have some creativity, have some flair, try different things, be yourself, be crazy, wacky, fun, write poems, do different things, because at the end of the day, you never know what's going to hit the right person on the right day. So I say be creative, be yourself, and have some fun with your sourcing as well.
Awesome. Hey, and ChatGPT can help you write some pretty funny poems.
True. This is true.
I don't know if that's considered your personality or ChatGPT's personality, but who will know? All right, it's time for speed round. So I have several questions for you all. We'll see how many we can get through. I want to make sure we have some time at the end for questions. So basically your goal is to answer as concisely as possible without going over 1 minute. So we're going to start with Eugene, and you'll have the first question. What one thing has surprised you the most about recruiting and hiring senior engineers?
Yeah, the fact that senior engineers invest zero or very little time in understanding the HR function, because I thought they are very thorough, they are very exact, but in their mind, HR manager, talent developer, recruiter, all of them are the same, and they spam people the same way as they complain that we spam them. This was a very big surprise. I thought that they will actually go through all the roles and they send the message to the right person that actually does recruitment, but it was not like that at all. For the last 10 years, I'm receiving all the messages, even though I'm not actually doing recruitment, I'm just managing the team. That was a very, very big surprise.
It's a good one. All right, next question. Jeremy, how do you handle a situation where a senior engineer has multiple job offers and is taking a long time to decide?
I love this question, and my answer might be different than most. I don't want to time box someone into making a decision to join my organization because of the pressure that I'm putting on them. I want them to choose our organization because it's a great next step and it aligns to where they want to drive their career. And the way that I do this is in my very first call with candidates, I'm asking them, what does that ideal position look like? You've been a staff engineer for 5 years, right? You know exactly where you add value. You know exactly what gets you excited. What does that look like? And then when they tell me that answer, they're giving me the keys and the answers to the test, the keys to the castle. And so when it comes down to the situation, I'm not the type that's going to say, you have 24 hours to respond or we're rescinding our offer. I'm the type of person to say, hey, I understand you have 3 or 4 offers. When we spoke the first time, you said these were the things that you were looking for, 1, 2, 3. Here are the things that we can give you accordingly towards 1, 2, and 3. Now, do you have to give them a reasonable time to make a decision? Of course, but I'm not going to put the hard pressure on them. I'm going to stress the things that we bring to the table, what attracted them to us in the first place, and put the ball in their court and let them make the best decision for themselves. Because at the end of the day, candidate experience still matters. And even if they turn down your job offer and go somewhere else, you want them to say, I had an amazing process that I went through with that organization, and I really, really respect that they gave me the flexibility to make the best decision for myself. And in the future, I would 100% apply again.
Awesome. All right, next up, Eugene. What is the most significant trend or technology shift you anticipate in the senior engineering job market in the next year?
Yeah, I do believe that co-pilots will become a very, very important discussion during the interviews. We'll be asking not only the stuff and the stack that they have, but what type of automation solutions do they use to make them 10x engineers? And I think that if today this is maybe more like a recommended question, or it starts to appear like a 7th, 8th question, I think it will become definitely in top 5 questions in 1 year when we'll be addressing questions to our senior tech engineers. One of the questions in the first 5, maybe even the top 3, will be what automations and what AI agents are you using that are making you a 10x engineer? And yeah, that will be the prediction that I have. Based on the last report of September, we already see over 50% of the code is written through suggestions and recommendations, and that comes from the seniors engineers mostly. So I think that will start growing for the next year as well, and will become one of the questions that we did not ask last year. We only started asking this year. I think it will be a must question next year.
And another shameless plug, one of the things that I think companies are going to need to do soon too is assess the skills that are required to use these generative AI tools and co-pilots. And we recently released an assessment of the skills that are needed to effectively harness generative AI. So those of you in the audience, feel free to check that out. And we've been doing a lot of writing on what those skills are and why they're important. All right, last question, Jeremy. What is the most unique or unexpected skill or hobby you've seen on a senior engineer's resume that caught your attention?
An engineer that I hired was a lathe woodworker, and he would make lampshades and wooden bowls. And I remember when we had our interview talking about that for more time than we talked about the role or his engineering background, because I just fell in love with some of the pictures and things that he shared. So yeah, I think that was the most interesting thing that I've seen.
Awesome. Okay, so we have a few questions from the audience, and feel free to put your questions in if you have them. If we don't get to all the questions, we will write up the answers and send those along with the recording. But I think we can probably get through what we have now. So the first question, in terms of marketing collateral, what do you think is necessary? Are brochures and one-pagers dead? Jeremy, you want to take this one?
I love the one-pager, even to this day. And here's the reason why. Every single engineering and dev team is different, right? They use different technologies. They have different team dynamics, different sizes, different locations, different backgrounds. So when you're going through an intake and talking to an engineering manager about their team, or talking to the individual team members, putting together a one-pager on what makes that team exciting, I think is still great and powerful collateral to be able to send out to engineers, especially in today's world, where everybody sort of knows what they want and where they fit in. So trying to get ahead of that curve, being real honest about your environment, creating some really cool content, working with your marketing team and employer branding. I love that stuff. I still think it's very applicable and very fun.
And hey, maybe now it's just embedding some video content, or some richer, more personal types of connections. That I agree.
For sure.
So Eugene, would you mind answering this one? As a member of HR, how can I relate or communicate best to my engineering teams and leaders? What strategies will help them relate to the need for a structured, planned hiring process?
Yeah, I think a lot will help when you are asking what meant for them when they joined the organization, when they wanted to join a company. I have a great the product creator and CTO of the platform with Linux, and every time he is saying, yeah, but what are we doing with this candidate? Why this company doesn't work with this candidate? I'm asking, hey, remember when you applied for that role? What was something that you really did like? And said, well, for me, the biggest problem was this. And I said, well, how we can do the platform in such a way so that actually we avoid those problems for our candidates. And I think at the end of the day, we need to understand that yes, there are a lot of differences between candidates, but there are some major things that doesn't work in the recruitment process. And if we manage to tackle them, if we manage to tackle the time that we spend when giving feedback and then we're losing candidates in the loop, or we manage to understand that just a technical test doesn't mean that this is a great technical leader that will inspire the team. So if we solve these few problems, so what I would recommend, take 2-3 problems that you can solve with your technical managers, and then start growing from there. What they don't like is when you're presenting, hey, this is the 7th feedback from our candidates why they don't join our company. They will not understand them. These are the pains that we see every day as the HR people. Find 1 or 2 that was their pain as well. Start working with that, and I think you'll find a lot of support there.
Yeah, that's a great answer, Eugene. And I would piggyback when working with engineering leaders and senior engineering leaders, the more data and pipeline analytics you can bring to the table, the more you start to speak their language. So when you're able to walk them through where are the gaps, where are things slowing down, why is that slowing down, and using analytical data, that will really speak to them and help them understand why you may need to change your process, build a more structured hiring process, and how you're going to do that. So let the data speak for itself. That will help you.
I was going to say the same thing. And I think, understanding what are their key pain points. So what are they hoping to get out of this? It's usually to save time, to reduce the risk of mishires, to increase the quality of hire. So tying those outcomes to your recruitment data and assessment data or what have you, and showing them how your efforts are directly linked to solving these pain points that they're having is also tends to resonate well with engineers. And, I sit in our product organization and work daily with many engineers. And as a psychologist, I find that there is a very strong intersection when it comes to how important it is to show data. So I just want to reiterate that as well. Show data, don't just make stuff up.
And I'm having a joke with my team as well. I'm saying, if you are not dreaming of Sarah Connor and how she's looking at you, that you are becoming such a good friend with Claude from Anthropic or ChatGPT or Poe from Quora, then you are probably having not the right dreams for 2023. So when you're approaching a discussion, there's literally a lot of great prompts that can help you right now create great arguments why we are losing candidates just because our process is not the right one there. So definitely, if you're not dreaming of Sarah Connor, we need to start, because this technology is really going to make you step up in 1 week, something that would have taken 1 month.
Good point. All right, let's move to the next question. And I'm actually going to commandeer this question first, and then you guys can add. Can you please suggest some platform or some way to test developer skills before the interviews start? Many senior developers do not like tasks. So this is something that we hear often. And whenever I hear this with a customer, I always like to know more and do some diagnostics to understand exactly how the assessment is being communicated to candidates. How are their expectations being set? Is the assessment solving a problem? So if you have plenty of interviewers available to go directly into an interview for the first step in the process, that should be the process. But presumably there's a need to reduce the funnel size before the interview stage. And so that's one assumption, though, that we need to question. You don't have to do an assessment before the technical interview. The technical interview can be the first step, and often is for many of our senior candidates. But again, assuming some volume hiring is happening so that you need some type of pre-screen to before that interview, then the next question I always ask is it the right assessment? And so that is a factor of several things. One, what skills is the assessment testing? And does the role actually require those skills? and not just as a nice to have, but are they truly essential for functioning in the role? So if the skills that are needed for the role are not reflected in the assessment, that misalignment is going to make candidates question why they're wasting their time on an assessment that doesn't relate to the role that they're going after. So this focus on skills and identifying the critical skills for the role and using that as a starting point to select content for your assessments, everything ties back to the skills. And that also helps with what we as in psychology call content validity. Content validity is the extent to which an assessment appropriately maps to the content of a job. And so again, if you're identifying what skills are needed for the job and then explicitly tying that content to those skills at the right level of difficulty in the right type of problem setting, the assessment takes on a level of realism that won't be so off-putting to a senior candidate. They'll sit down and say, I can see why I'm being asked to complete this because of my understanding of what this job requires. It's also good to have some job experts review the test content before it goes out for these very same things. Ask them, is this assessment content relevant for the role? Is it at an appropriate level of difficulty? Would you rely on this assessment to help inform who's going to be a good fit for this role? If that job expert involvement is not there, there's a very good chance that the test will be misaligned to the role. And so it's not an issue of being resistant to testing, it's being resistant to that test that doesn't make sense to the candidate. And so these are just, some things that need to happen on the front end in order to set the stage for an assessment to even begin to perform well. And then on the back end, maybe using the assessment as a point of discussion in that richer, more interactive interview phase. So it doesn't feel like they just wasted 3 hours on a coding test that they're never going to talk about or see again. So using that as a point of discussion in that interview also helps reinforce that that was valuable time spent. So that's what I'll say. Jeremy, anything to add, or Eugene, anything to add? I know we're kind of short on time. I just went on my soapbox there for a little.
Nope, exactly what she said. That was perfect, Taylor.
All right, awesome. Okay, we have 2 more minutes. I'm going to try to sneak at least one more in. Okay, so sorry with the one-pagers again. Do you not find that because everyone is doing one-pagers that they might not stand out from the crowd? So I'm going to flip this. How do you make a one-pager stand out from the crowd?
I think it depends on what part of the process you want to use it to. So you can be creative with it. So maybe you don't send it out during the solicitation phase, which probably a lot of organizations are doing. Maybe you send the one pager after they've spoken to the recruiter and maybe the hiring manager, they're meeting with some of the technical team members, and they get an email from the recruiter saying, hey, here's a really fun one pager that the team put together on what it's like to work on this team. We think it'd be real valuable information for you. Here's a couple little tips and tricks to get them prepped and ready to go. Find a way to drive that differentiation, find a way to have fun with it, and find a way to make your organization stand out. So it doesn't always have to be in that phase. It could be any time during the process. Just think about what a great candidate experience is and again, go for that.
Awesome. Well, we are at time. This has been a really fun conversation. Thank you so much, Jeremy and Eugene, for sharing your wisdom and expertise with us. I've benefited personally from it, and I know our audience members have as well. We will be following up with the recording to the session. Feel free to rewatch it if you missed any of the knowledge that was dropped today. And we look forward to hosting more webinars in the future, and we hope you'll join us. Hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers, everyone.